Hello Nitro fans, Racing 393. I'm just trying a couple of videos here, a slightly different angle so that you can kind of see me without you looking right at me. It usually helps me show you what I'm talking about because you've got a better view, because my hands can be in the way and the camera's the other way around. But anyway, it's been a little while since I've done a video, mainly because of work, if I'm honest. It has gone crazily busy at the moment with one thing and another, so I don't have as much time on my hands to do any videoing of anything. I'm kind of got loads of things in the background going on as well. I've got a couple of sheds to build, big sheds, and one of those is going to be an RC shed. But that's, at the minute, we've got the sheds. I say sheds, one's for my other half, so she'll have a shed for bits and pieces and things that she needs it for, and I'll have my own shed for the RC stuff, amongst other things. Now, I've got a few cars and projects sort of ongoing, as and when I get round to them. Like, for example, the Kyosho Nitro Turbo Burns 4x4 build. It's coming along really nicely. There's a video on my channel of it sort of running, but I'm now at that point where I need to take it out to take it for a tune and a test drive, and that's where I haven't had time to get out and about. So on to another project, but this one's a bit easier. So these dismantling and talking videos are just easier for me to fit in as and when I get some spare time. It does take quite a bit of organisation to get out and about with an RC car, more so with the Nitro, because they're not always as straightforward as you'd like them. It goes to sort of, it opens up your eyes of just how easy the electric RC vibe is. But yeah, so now I've done many videos on the Traxxas Fortec 2-speed Nitro car. There's a video on my channel of a couple of cars that I've got. I've still got them too, and the most recent one being the Peugeot, where I kind of I wouldn't say rebuilt it, but I bought it as a not working. It had a few things missing, and I bought items for it, etc., etc. So that, did I do a running video? I'm pretty sure I did. Or did I not put a speed meter in it? I can't remember now, but I was always after another Nitro Traxxas Fortec. They're not that difficult to get hold of, but they're getting harder to find in a reasonable condition. Now this is the one that I could have done with buying when I was looking for bits for my other one, because this has everything on it that I need. I've just taken out the electrics at the moment, they're being sold separately because they're old style electrics. But I was on the lookout just to remind you, various things like the foam front bumper, which you can see there, the drive shafts, you can't see them, but you know, Traxxas telescopic drive shafts, standoffs for the shock absorber. What else was it? I think that's about it really. I mean, there was nothing else actually missing off the car, but without those items, more so the drive shaft, you couldn't use it. I also think there's some front hubs on the original car. They're not the best. They're not broken, but the thread might be a little bit weak inside. Of course, I've got 2 hubs on here. It also came with another 2 hubs, which are new. So anyway, and also this is a bit better. So if I turn this over, it's quite a good under chassis. Quite clean. I'll be honest, it's better than mine. I say this is mine, but better than my other one. So yeah, I paid this. I got this off eBay, and I paid, I think including postage, about, I don't know, I can't remember, £78, which is about, if you convert that over, it's about 78 euros, and I would say something like $89. And I've noticed that these go in the US. I've seen these for sale on eBay in the US for something like $1,200. I mean, what? Are you kidding me? $1,200? dollars. That's like, what's that? That's well into £1,000 for in UK money. I can't believe I wouldn't pay £1,000 for this. There's no way. But they come with two different types of engine. Now the Traxxas 3.3, I believe, is the sought after one. The 2.5 is another one that it comes with. I think the 2.5 is more common, as in to buy. And you can still. Can you buy these new? I'm not sure. You can buy the electric version. I don't know whether you can buy these brand new as a nitro. Don't think so. And the 3.3 Traxxas motor is the most desired one because it's got more power. Now, this engine in this car is the same as what I've got in my other one. Now, the only difference with this one is, you've probably seen it on there. You can see there that it's got the roto start part here on the back, and my one hasn't got that. Mine's just a pull start, or the underneath, you know, the flywheel start underneath. So as far as the compression, it feels all right. It feels pretty good. Now, the reason I got this, mainly for spares, that was, I say mainly, that's probably point one of why I got it. The other reason is I'm going to take this motor out, we'll strip it down, and we're going to see if we can do any tuning. Now, I did try that on a previous motor for my 1/8 buggy, but I never got around to filming it properly because I couldn't get the liner back in. So I know what I did. It's probably my fault. I mean, so we're going to take a bit of extra care with this one. So they're not super fast. Even with a 2-speed, they're probably 45, maybe. They're nice, smooth running. It does run. This has got exactly the same 2-speed setup. So what we're going to do is we'll get it stripped. We'll have a look at it. I don't know whether that will be how many parts of this video series it will be. We'll probably have a specific name for this one because we're taking the motor out. And basically just sort of tuning the motor. You shouldn't have to do it. I mean, you might be saying, why bother? But the one I've got in my other Traxxas goes really well, and that's completely stock standard. And I just want to, for the, you know, just something to do, is get this stripped down, get it rebuilt, change anything that needs changing, you know, i.e. anything that's obvious. I think that the pinch or the compression feels fine, but we won't know until we take it off. We'll give it a good clean up, and then it will go into the running Traxxas Fortec, and I will probably incorporate the Traxxas sort of start. I don't know what that's called. What's that called? I don't know. You know, the one you plug it in there. This can go anywhere. This doesn't have to go at the back and up near the window, so we can route these anywhere we like. So the first process is to get the motor out. Now, from memory, the motor is kind of embedded in. It's got, like, where the 2-speed clutch bells are, it's got like a cover over here. So it does make it a little bit, you've got to take this off first. It does make it a little bit harder to get out without removing anything. It might come out. I mean, the exhaust, it's got an old style exhaust on it. It's not an exhaust I would use, but it is an original Traxxas exhaust nevertheless. If we remove that, we can take the cable ties off, just pull it off the manifold there, the header at the back. So there's a possibility that the engine can be just undone from underneath. Fairly straightforward, I would guess. And we might be able to get the motor out and then onwards and upwards. So that's going to be my first task. So let me just get my tool sorted and I'll be back. So I've taken the exhaust away from the header. Now, from memory, I'm pretty sure that taking this motor out isn't a simple case of just undoing these bolts, because that's part of the proprietary sort of setup. I think these ones can come out, because that's what you can keep the mount in the chassis and just take the engine away from the mount, rather than taking the mount off, because the mount is kind of embedded in the plastics. So with that in mind, I'm going to attempt just to undo, once I've got the correct size wrench. I know I said I was going to do that off camera, but I didn't, because my toolbox is kind of a bit of a mess. Is it that size? Okay, so that's a 332 size. I don't know what that is. It's not in me. I must have bought a metric size. But anyway, we're going to try and undo that, and that. Now, with any old RC car, because let's face it, these are kind of, what, mid-90s, probably? Something like that. In my other videos, I've got some dates which are kind of what I've got off the internet. But when you get old cars, I suppose it can be really difficult sometimes undoing. Now, the problem you have is that wrench there isn't perfectly sized. There's a bit of play. Do you see that? And I'm always a little bit skeptical. Is that even if that's the right size wrench even? Because you can very easily break and strip these bolts, and they're not very strong at the best of times. I'm going to have to... I've got another wrench that's slightly tighter in there, so I'm going to try and dig them out first before I attempt it with this one. So we've gone over to a slightly different size, and this is probably, I think they're Imperial, aren't they? I can never remember which way around it was. Imperial's like American. I can never remember. And metric is what we use. So that's the size I was going to use. In there, that's got a... It probably would work, but it's got a bit of play. I think I bought these for a specific car that I had at the time. It might be the RC10 GT. I think that was right, American, isn't it? Now this one, this is more of a British size. So that hex, I've just tried it in there, is a much tighter fit. So with a bit of luck, yeah, they're not tight anyway, so that's good. That's good. There's no play at all. They're not actually very tight. I don't know if it's good or bad. Right, so they've all come undone. So we'll take these out one at a time. You notice when I undone that, I did it crossways, so I would do it like this. It doesn't really matter which way around you do that, but rather than go round like this, I always start when you tighten things up as a cross, because it just spreads the load a little bit. But you know, as it happens, they weren't tight. So I've undone all those screws. They're very tiny, actually. I'm surprised. I mean, they'd snap off. You could probably snap them with your teeth. Can you see that? That's tiny, tiny. Now, I can feel... I can't remember how you get this off now. Okay, so we've got the engine out. Wasn't too difficult, but it is one of them weirdly proprietary ways of putting it in. Now, I could have perhaps... You can undo... There's some bolts here, so you can see like that bit there. 2 bolts either side, typical bolts. And that would have left the mount in. But you can't get to them because it's on, you know, they're poorly designed. There's 2 either side, so they're underneath the header without taking the header off. And you can't really get to the header when you've got that on there. So anyway, it is out. It's a bit grubby. I think the main thing here is I'll probably will take that little motor off, and we're going to see what sort of condition this is. We're going to take the fuel pipe off. They have got a rather neat protector there to stop the hose getting pinched. So I'll probably reuse that, to be honest. That's not a bad idea. It's got one of those filters on that you can clean. So there's no reason at all why I shouldn't be able to take that off. So we can clean that and probably reuse the filter. And that's just the wiring. So you can see that does come off the earth, I guess. That goes onto the bottom of the mount. And the other two go onto the end of the motor there. And then you've got the auto start thing here, the auto glow start, which is, you know, unique to this. So I think the first thing I'm going to do, I do need to remove the motor. So that's 2 screws there. So that's the motor for the roto start. Roto start, is that what it's called? Traxxas roto start? Well, I just said something that's so damn obvious. Right, so I now need somewhere a crosshead screw. So let me screwdriver. So we should be able to, these should come on. Nothing's been, the thing is, all the screws screw into plastic. So the screws themselves shouldn't be stripped or damaged, mainly. And they only screw into plastic, which makes, they don't have to be like stupid Bruce Banner tight. And if you don't know who Bruce Banner is, he's the original, is it Bruce Banner? What am I talking about? The Hulk, the TV series Hulk. So I'm not sure, because I've not used one of these before, whether those 2 little screws hold that in, but they might do. Yes. So that's the motor. The teeth are not stripped. It's like a long pinion. But yeah, it is only it is a very cheap, but nevertheless straightforward design. So I think what I need to do now, I've got to take the header off so that I can get to the earth lead and get the roto start off. Now the header is, hopefully these will fit. As again, they've got a little bit of play in them, so I'm going to try probably my UK one. And that's nice and tight, so let's see, make sure they're not too tight. And they're not, that wasn't mega tight, that one. And neither was that, although when you're undoing them, you can, it's only going into aluminium. It sort of has a tight spot where it's probably stripping itself out of the aluminium, but we'll do it carefully. That's fine. It's been there for years. So one of the things to do is when you're undoing old motors, engines, whichever motor, we call it an engine. It's not an electric motor, is it? Is to take your time and not force anything. There shouldn't be much force behind it. Most of the time, it's pretty because they've been there for so long. This one's oh, they're saying that this one is a bit tight. I'm doing it, but it might be right. It's got a bit of a tight spot on it. I'm doing it, so I'm hoping it might be bent, I suppose, but yeah, it's not to force them. If they look rusty, then apply some penetrating fluid on them. So that's come apart quite nicely. So that just needs a bit of a clean up on there. I suppose even the header gasket, I think it feels a bit brittle, if I'm honest. I've got these, so probably don't need to use that one, but we won't break it up just in case. The screws that went in flicked out as they usually do. Now they have got washers on there, which I hope I haven't lost. So these are all pinged off, but they've got like tiny little washers on there. With a little bit of oil put on here and sort of a bit of a clean up on the threads, they will be fine. They just, where they get a bit gooey in there. So they've been in there for like forever, haven't they? So it's a bit of a messy job. So if you're doing it indoors, make sure you're not getting anything on your expensive table. But this ain't expensive, but yeah, just be super careful. I suppose we can probably take, I'm hoping we get to them. Does that undo from there? So we've got the engine mount screws, but the problem is with the head on, the cooling head, it is harder to get, you're at an odd angle there. So we're going to see, so they're not tight at all. So those two that side have undone. Let's try this side. It's just because it goes in, but it goes in at a slight angle. So you've got to make sure the tool is seated. That's fine. And that's fine. So all four of those screws have come out. For those that need to know, this is the TRX 0.15. So I'm still thinking whether or not, how many parts this will be, because I'm not going to get all this done in this video. I think the first thing to do is take these screws out. With them screws out, the Traxxas rotor start can be removed, and that's the sort of the standard engine mount. I think these they're super cheap cast. I don't think that is aluminium, but that could have actually stayed in the chassis if I'm honest. But that there is the motor. The only thing I've got to do now is take the roto start off. All the dirt's coming off, so it is a very mucky job. So let's take these off. And that's loose, so let's get this off. It's exactly the same setup. You know, you've got the bearing there, one-way bearing that turns the gear, that turns the roto start of the Traxxas tool. I just need to get myself a bit of rag. So we've got the bearing here. Usually the bearing's something which I would replace from making mistakes in the past. And it is fairly standard size. You know, is it providing that it may not need it. Feels like it's got a good compression on there. So I suppose the next thing to do is probably to take the carburetor off. It is quite oily and mucky in there, as you can see, but it's a very small engine. Surprising amount of performance out of one of these. Look at the carb intake there, tiny compared to a 1/8 scale buggy. Pea shooter, so pen size. I suppose to try and get more performance out of these, there's not much else you can do. I mean, it's probably not. This is probably in quite good condition, so you're probably thinking, don't go and wreck it. But the one I've got is pretty good. That looks all right, and we can see that I can see the piston in there, and it looks nice and clean. Yeah, it does look good. So I think the next thing to do. So what I'll probably do is we'll get the engine stripped. We'll take the carb off. We'll take the head off. We'll perhaps take this back plate off, and we can then check the compressioning in there, because I want the cylinder out, the liner, to do some little bit of work with. We've got to take the cooling head off as well, and then that will end part one, and in part two will be the clean and rebuild, because that feels great on there. There's actually no resistance. There's a little bit of free play there, which there should be a little bit of end float. But the engine does want a bit of cleaning on it. And it just comes straight out. So it comes straight out of a Traxxas. It'll go straight back in. The only thing I'll have to clean up is the roto start part of it. And then we can see the performance difference should be noticeable with a bit of luck, because I can remember how well the standard Traxxas 0.15 TRX 0.15 went. So, okay, so what should we do? I think it's it's like I don't know what that is. That feels like it does fit, so that should come off. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which way the carb goes back on. It can go either way if you've had it on another engine. So I don't know how. I suppose the next thing is how much force is going to be needed to take this carburetor off. I don't want to damage it in any way, because it's not a particularly strong carb. I will strip it down, which is something I tend to do anyway. Now, I don't know how, so I need something to push on there, and I haven't got like a rubber mallet. And likewise, I don't want to sort of grab it with these pincers and then break something. So let's just, oh, that's all right. It's not that tight actually. So that's the carburetor off, nice and easy. It's going to get cleaned out anyway down there, and that pin does come out now, so that goes in a certain way with a little recess on there, which you can probably see, so that'll be fine. Okay, so the next thing I think is the cooling head. So we'll take the cooling head off. I wonder if that's the same size. That would be handy. Everything seems to fit at the moment, but it might not be this size. It could be, yeah. So this is the next thing. How tight are these? So this is a 2.5mm hex, I think. And it doesn't seem very tight. So this engine does not seem to be abused in any way, shape or form. So let's take the head off, the cooling head. Comes off quite nicely. Just get those screws out. So the head's got a little bit of scuff work on there. We'll clean that up. Give it a clean down. We might even do it a slightly different colour because it's been fettled, if you like. So that's good. Inside the engine looks reasonably good. If I show you that there, there doesn't look like to be much wear at all in there, to be fair. So that's very, very good. I think we've got to take that end plate off. You're probably asking, is it the same tool? Is that a 2.5? Yes, it is. So 2.5. They're a little bit tighter, but a 2.5 tool fits everything. In a diagonal form again, you can hear these have probably been... Oh, that one looks a bit dodgy, that one. I have to check that one. Because I just put it in very lightly and it didn't grip. So that's done. There's one which was a bit tight. Typically, that's it. They've got some, there was like some grease and things in there, so have to be very, very careful then. So because we've undone them, you don't need, once they're undone, God, that's tight on there. The back plate is now loose. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that off. It just might want a little bit of persuasion on the end there, like that. I'll do one the other side, and like that. So that came off very, very easily. And there you have it. Now that has this has got a little notch in there for like the location of the pin for the com rod, and that I think was or could be spring loaded. I don't know, can't remember. Got to put something down the bore to take the sleeve off. There's me thinking I've done everything and I haven't. So I've got a cable tie here ready. I'm hoping now that when you turn this over that the sleeve pops up using the piston as a bit of a force. God, it does move, but it's tight. The sleeve has moved. Now, to take that out, I don't want to you don't want to prise it or gouge it. So I'm hoping, yes, I'm just going to use the end of the flat part of my flathead screwdriver. I'm using a small amount of pressure, but not a lot. Just got to move my other tools out of the way. There we go. So it's got a little notch on here on the front, and there's a little notch on there as well, which you can probably see. They've got a marry up on there. So there's the exhaust port, and they're like the transfer port. So there's not much else I can do with them, but we'll try anyway. Because I want to take the piston out. Oh, did I do that now? That's it. So the piston is out. Now I didn't check which way on that went. I think it was that. Yeah, so it wasn't that way. So the flat end, that end of it was the one facing out of the bottom of the crank. So when you look at this, it potentially could go either way. I could be wrong. It's got the notch out there for the exhaust port. But let's see how tight that is in here. So it's tight at the top, very tight. So yeah, it's probably, it could do. I've got my pinching tool, so I might even re-pinch it a little bit. That's going to give it a little bit more performance. Because the piston shouldn't really go fully up to the end of the, I mean, I can push that all the way up, but it's tight. It's loose-ish there and tighter at the top, but not mega tight. So this probably want a slight re-pinch, very, very light, not much at all. So my hands are really messy. So that's going to be the end of part one of my strip down. So I'm just going to basically clean this up. I've got to make sure I don't lose that pin in there, because without that pin, we're knackered. The pin does come out and it's got a spring underneath it. So I'm going to be very careful. If I take it out, I've got to be super careful. I know it does come out. So it might come out once I clean it. That's what I want to be careful of. I don't want to lose it. So once I start cleaning this, I've got to be super careful. So I'm thinking ahead of myself. Dirty hands. I've got to re-pinch that. This piston looks in good condition. The whole engine's actually in good condition, so I don't want to knacker it. We can clean things up and put it all back together. I'll check and clean the one-way bearing. Clean up the wiring, clean this motor up. So part two will be more of the reassembly, a bit of pinching. I'm not sure when I'm going to do that because I'm super busy, but that'll do for now. So that's my bit of a plan for my Traxxas Tech. Also showing you how to take apart a TRX 0.15, and not that you probably wouldn't know how to do it. And I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to clean myself up, and then I'll be back for part 2 in the not too distant future. Thanks for watching, do appreciate it, and bye for now.